They gave me Vicodin after my knee surgery. They kept prescribing it, so I kept taking it. I didn't know it would be this addictive. I didn't know how far I'd go to get more.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
Hello, and welcome to Cleveland Honors, a program dedicated to educating you about our justice system and the people behind it. In this episode, we will talk with former Cleveland Municipal Court Judge and current Cuyahoga County Law Director, Robert Triozzi. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Here. I'm glad to hear that. Such a nice day. We're going to talk about your life and working as a judge and what you're doing now and letting people know how you're doing.
Sure.
So, but before we get started, tell me about your early life. Where are you from? Cleveland? Where were you born, and how?
I was born in Ashtabula. You know, Ashtabula is in the far reaches of Cleveland's orbit. I grew up being a Browns fan, an Indians fan, and then a Cavaliers fan, being part of Cleveland, but really a small town, just an hour up the lake.
Okay. Is Ashtabula on the lake?
Right on the lake.
Right.
Well, that's the Ashtabula County is the most northeastern county, and it's, but it does. I was part of the county way up north, the harbor, Ashtabula Harbor area,
okay.
Close to the lake.
Okay, good. So you enjoyed the summers in Ashtabula?
Sure did.
Okay,
sure
it's
did.
a nice season we have going on right now. Where did you go to high school?
Ashtabula Harbor High School, which was right overlooked the lake in Ashtabula Harbor. It doesn't exist anymore. It's now an empty lot. Ashtabula consolidated its schools a number of years ago, and Ashtabula High School, our tribal, and Harbor, they merged, and now it's Lakeside High School.
Lakeside High School. Okay. You went to college?
Yes, I did.
Where'd you go?
Went to Cornell University.
And where's Cornell?
It's in Ithaca, New York, upstate New York.
Okay.
It was a wonderful experience, coming out of a small town into this vibrant cultural and intellectual center. Really exposed a lot to me about the world, about just the both opportunities and challenges, and as a student there, being with other students and faculty all engaged with really understanding things at a very deep level. And it was just an opportunity of a lifetime to be able to have the good fortune of being able to go there.
Good. What made you choose Cornell?
Well, it was on my reach list. You know how students are. It was just a top American university that one that felt I reasonably had the credentials to get in, but of all of the other schools that were on my wish list, it was just a 6 or 5.5 hour drive from Ashtabula, so it was that was also a factor, at least from my mom's point of view.
Yeah. New York, but not far.
Right.
Okay. What was your major?
I ended up with a double major. I started off as a government major, but started taking some history classes. I was very interested in American foreign policy, and I had a professor there, Professor Walter Lefebvre, who was, to this day, the most gifted professor that I've ever encountered. And I just kept taking more and more of his classes to the point where I was able to also major in history. That was because of a teacher did that for me, because he opened my eyes and opened up a world to me that I didn't know that existed, and encouraged me, and I decided to follow that path.
Well, we all need a teacher like that in our lives to give us a little guidance. At some time, you made a decision you wanted to go to law school.
Right.
Was that directly after Cornell, or?
No, I think probably even during my going to Cornell in the first place, I always had in the back of my mind that legal career was something that I that I thought I'd want to pursue. I grew up in a very volatile time. This was I was in high school during the waning years of Vietnam, Watergate, being glued to the TV, seeing the American democracy unfold in such drama, being very attracted to the lawyers and the impact that they had. I always thought I wanted to pursue a career in justice. I thought, going into the Justice Department or something like that was what motivated me. And so when I went to college, all of those experiences, particularly in my teen years, were beginning to form my desired pathway, the kind of life I wanted to lead, the issues that were important to me, the impact I wanted to make. It seemed that even early on that a legal career was the way to, for me to, fully, put my arms around the kind of career that I wanted.
Okay. Now, and what law school did you choose to go to?
I came. That's when I came to Cleveland.
Oh,
I came
okay.
to Case Western Reserve University. I knew at Cornell that Ohio was home, and Cleveland was. Even though it wasn't from Cleveland, I really, for me growing up, Cleveland was the Big Apple, and. I wanted to be here and had an opportunity to go to Case, and I never regretted that. I've lived in the city ever since. I've been I started law school.
Okay, and you're still living in the city.
I still live in the city.
And you're currently law director for the county.
County, right?
All right. Well, before we get to that, let's talk about what you did. You went to law school.
Went to law school.
3 years and got out. What did you do after law school?
Well, there were again wanting to. I had ideas of where I wanted to work, but the the places where I wanted to work weren't necessarily ready to have me. So I had an opportunity to begin doing some work with a small firm in downtown Cleveland, and they did mostly trial work, a lot of criminal defense work, and what I thought was a very temporary move for me until some other things came into play. A decade later, I realized I was still there and loving every minute of it. I had an opportunity very early in my career to get into the courthouse every single day. I became a trial lawyer, trying cases right and left, a lot of jury trial experience. I worked my way up in the criminal defense world. Was certified to represent indigent defendants in capital cases. Actually was legal counsel in a few of those.
Okay.
But I was able to build a law practice. Being associated with some of the finest people that I've met in my career, one of whom is now the Cuyahoga County Public Defender, Mark Stanton, and I were practiced law. We're partners for a while, and it was just a wonderful experience. I learned just so much. You're getting thrown into the fire like that. I had. A lot of my colleagues that had other opportunities, maybe in larger firms, that didn't end up with as much trial experience as I did. I probably tried more cases in my first 3 years than many of them probably have in their careers. But
that's a good thing.
That was a great thing.
Yes,
it was a great. I learned a lot. And not only from the people in my office, just being in the court, watching some of the masters at work. Tom Shaughnessy,
okay.
right? There were just some phenomenal lawyers, and back in the day too. That when at the end of the day there was frequent gatherings to tell war stories, and I was very, very grateful to being able to hang along. Even though I was a young guy, that just to be able to sit across the table and you hear some of the masters just talk about things, talk about the courts, their strategy, And then also having the opportunity to observe in the courtrooms. I mean, because you know how it is, Judge. You know, the lawyers show up. There's a lot of waiting, and you know you see other people at work. And this legal community was very, very sharp, very high level, and I learned a lot. And like I said, 10 years I was still there and enjoying every minute of it.
Good, good. You decided to run for judge at some point in time.
Right, right. Well, I had after that first 10 years, a friend. I was very involved at the courthouse, sharpening my legal skills. But I was always very involved in my community. At that time, lived up in the North Collinwood neighborhood of Cleveland. It was just involved on a whole assortment of neighborhood issues, organizations. Really. You know, because the life of this community resonated with me. I wanted to be a lawyer that was helpful to people in their lives, and so became very active in the community. And a friend of mine, Eric Fingerhut, ran for Congress and won. Okay. And Ashtabula happened to be in his congressional district. And Eric asked me if I could join him, and he named me his district director. So I left my practice to run the congressman's office here in the district.
Okay, was that in Ashtabula?
Well, no, our main office, because it was the district was Ashtabula, Lake, and Cuyahoga County. We had our offices right in the middle of the district in Lake County.
Lake County,
right?
okay.
So that's where the office was. But this district went all the way from Hopkins Airport all the way into Ashtabula. It was one of those gerrymandered districts that had a lot of miles to it. And I had... It had a lot of contacts and work in all three counties. So becoming the director made sense to Eric, and it certainly was a nice opportunity for me to do something a little bit different. But as things go, this was the first 2 years of the Clinton administration. A lot of health care, a lot of things going on, and when it came time to, for re-election, Newt Gingrich had a lot to say about that. And, after that one term, there wasn't to be a second term. Okay. And so that is the time then that the thought of running for the bench, it was put in front of me. It was actually the same night that election which the congressman was defeated, was the same election that a number of vacancies occurred in the Cleveland Municipal Court. Some judges had, I think Judge Saffold was elected to the Common Pleas Court. There had been some vacancies. Judge Fleming had passed, and there was just this one of those moments that because of my legal experience and my community experience, the thought of running for judge was, and the fact that I necessarily needed to make a transition at that point, that the thought entered my mind that I should throw my hat in the ring for one of those vacancies that existed.
Okay, and you had been involved in politics with Eric, so you knew who needed to be contacted.
Right.
And it just kind of worked out for you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And Eric and I were neighbors at the time.
That's right.
Ripley Road,
Yep,
right off Shaker Square.
Right.
And I have not seen Eric. Is he still around Cleveland?
Well, no, he's in Washington. He's the director of the Hillel Foundation globally. I mean, he's got a no surprise. Eric is one of the more committed, dedicated, smart people I've ever worked with. I'm proud to call him a friend, and he's just done remarkable things with us. He was the chancellor of education in Ohio after he went back to the state senate. He's done some great work, and we've maintained our friendship. But he and his family are now in Washington.
All right. Well, please tell him I said hi and send my regards. And he was a great neighbor. Great neighbor. And so you've run for political office and won.
Right.
And how long did you serve on the bench?
So, just a couple months short of a decade.
Okay.
I was elected, re-elected, did a lot of, it was a wonderful experience. It was truly, if not the highlight, one of the top highlights of my career, just being in that environment. The work that this court did for while I was there and continues to do was really just a remarkable experience.
There's a legacy of it being the People's Court.
That's right.
And was it the People's Court when you got there, or did that name come about? Do you
well,
know the history?
I think that a number of us probably penned that at about the same time, because it was pretty clear that when you open the doors to the Justice Center every single day, and just all of Cleveland, both its strength and its obstacles, just kind of unfold in front of the court all the time. And it's a high volume place. People with just everyday challenges, everyday experiences, all of the obstacles that that life brings. You see it unfold every day in the Cleveland Municipal Court.
And I remember. Now we have to take a break real quick. Right now we're going to take a break, but we'll be back shortly to talk more with Judge Triozzi. Thank you. Welcome back to Cleveland Honors. Today we are talking with Cuyahoga County Law Director and former Cleveland Municipal Court Judge Robert Triozzi. Judge Triozzi, we were talking about your transition to the bench. We have a lot of people we talk to every day that we try and help. You were instrumental in starting the mock trial program when you were a judge. Tell me about that.
Well, all of the things. This was a very innovative time, at the court, and the mock trial really. Actually, that stemmed from the moment, the day I took my oath of office, because of my just my lifelong, a lot of the work that I was doing even before I became judge and was working with the school systems. I chose to have my swearing-in ceremony at Martin Luther King High School because I wanted to just make that connection of the work that we do. All of us public officials have a direct impact on the children in our community, and our obligation to keep them front and center on the work that we do to make sure that there's a bright future ahead for them. And while I was at the Martin Luther King, the librarian told me that the street law program that had operated at Cleveland State was no longer in existence. And I just took it upon myself. I didn't like to hear that, and pulled together all of the high school teachers again, high school administrators, to really begin reestablishing that relationship within the law, between our profession, not necessarily the court, but between our profession and our students, particularly at Martin Luther King, which was at the time a magnet school for law and public service.
Yes.
And so as a result of that, and one of the questions I asked the social studies teachers was the mock. I knew that there was a statewide mock trial competition, and they participate in that. And their response to me was that because of how they schedule things there, it was really hard for them to meet the demands of that competition. And so my response is, well, why don't we just do our own? And so I took it upon myself to start writing cases for them every year, based on something I saw in my court. What was in it for me is I wanted not only the students to appreciate and have an opportunity to have an experience within the law, because that's really an exciting, fun thing to do. What was in it for me was I want them to learn something that might be of help to them. And so I'd choose an issue, a challenging issue that would hopefully have some relevance to them. So there, in addition to the courtroom work, there was a writing competition. I wanted them to be talking about these issues and thinking about these issues and relating it to their own experience. So I did it the first year, I did it the second year, and 10 years later, I was still did. When I left the court, I gave Judge Jones this all of the cases with a big bow on it, and I said, "You guys, and to the court's credit, Judge Moore, Lauren Moore, and others have continued that on. The competition now is, this is in its 20-something year. It's really gone on.
It's still going on.
And Judge Moore is such a good writer. I wish I had pulled her in earlier, because she just does a marvelous job, and I'm so grateful to her and you and the rest of the judges for continuing that on, because I continue to hear from teachers that the value that has to them in encouraging their students to pursue career, to think of themselves in a way that we think of them, and that's highly accomplished students that, given an opportunity to succeed, they will. And so I thank you for your efforts and in the court's efforts for continuing that program.
It's one of the joys of the court, seeing all the high school students come in and presenting their arguments, their trials. And witnesses being called. Right. It's a large effort, and but even after that, they go on to continue.
Exactly.
So you started something, and it's going on. So congratulations.
So thank you.
We have a number of specialized dockets in the Cleveland Municipal Court, probably more than any other court in the state, I would think.
Right.
You were also involved in getting the mental health docket started.
Right, and this is one of those within our profession. I don't think the court gets enough credit for being trailblazers in the specialized docket world. The drug court started at the Cleveland Municipal Court after the county court turned down the federal grant. It was the Judge Jones and my colleagues that voted to pull that in with Stephanie Tubbs Jones, and because she was a county prosecutor at the time, figuring out a way to put a round peg in a square hole to have these cases heard at the municipal level was what happened because of the leadership and at the Cleveland Municipal Court. And the drug court was really the first effort at these specialized dockets, really beginning to, for the first time, to appreciate that a lot of the issues that we had to deal with in our court, our system wasn't set up, the adversary system that we studied in law school and that we practiced in, that adversarial system wasn't well suited to deal with cases that needed more of a therapeutic response. And so the drug court became a therapeutic model, and that gave rise then to the other types of things, usually involving behavioral health issues, that a more therapeutic response was better than our adversarial, prosecutor versus defense. This is all designed on how you help people who have certain issues. And the one that I focused on was on mental illness. It became very clear to me that just seeing the amount of time, the number of people and the amount of time mentally ill people spent in our jail. Mostly because of the lack of support in their lives. It wasn't because they were necessarily out, in a active state of their mental illness. It's just their mental illness created instability in their lives that when things begin to break down, they become more inclined to be engaged in the criminal justice system. And so we began, we'd already had a court psychiatric clinic, but taking the advantage that we had with the clinic, bring in the case managers and the social workers right into the courtroom. We all became partners in this. Our probation department, our psychiatric clinic, the agencies from the Adams Board coming in to have this ongoing supervision of individuals that were caught up in the criminal justice system, but having to address the mental illness in order for them to be successful and for the system to be successful. So we really started. We didn't call it a mental health court at the time, but it was probably the first mental health court in the state. You know, other folks. I know Akron was doing some things, but we call it our mentally disordered offenders program. We were at it. We started it. It was very successful, and that model now has been replicated. Our common police court has taken that model and really, the Muni Court still has it, the Common Police Court has it.
Yes,
and now there's a nationwide initiative underway, the Stepping Up Initiative. Much of it is now doing those things that we began in Cleveland 15 years ago.
I remember seeing the county sheriff in LA County saying that his jails were the biggest mental health holder and provider in LA County.
Right, and you'll see that, Judge. The largest mental health facility in Cuyahoga County is the county jail, our county jail. You see that across the country. And some of the work I continue to do at the county now as law director is focused on, I work with the judges from the municipal court, the county court, common police court, on initiatives to really continue to address this issue. We've done a good job of keeping a lot of people from the state prison system, but they continue to spend a lot of time in our county jail. We're still working together collaboratively to figure that problem out.
You know, and there's so many people that think judges only deal with sending people to jail to punish them.
Right.
But when you look at the specialized docket, what you just started,
right.
And even the mock trial, you're helping students, get them some exposure. The mental health court is helping some people stay out of the justice
right.
system. And I imagine the Adams Board has just grown tremendously
sure.
because of the work between the courts and the community.
Right.
So thank you for doing that. There were some other judges on the Cleveland Municipal Court when you were a judge. How did they influence you? What were judges' meetings like?
Well,
back then?
they for being particularly being new there. I mean, it's much like my time as a young lawyer. I mean, you take advantage of the opportunity to tap into other people's expertise and leadership. It was a very good dynamic. A lot of these, whether it be the mental health court, the truancy docket, the mock trial, and I wasn't the only one. There was Project Hope. There were a number of other initiatives. All the judges had ideas. It wasn't just me. I mean, I was just part of it, and everybody was so supportive of everybody else and what their special initiatives were. It was interesting when we started, while I was there, Judge Jones had started our town hall meetings, and Judge Jones, during his introductions of everybody, had a little nickname for all of us, based on where our particular interest was outside not on the bench, but the kinds of things that we were doing that were not only helping our court, but more broadly speaking, helping the justice system more broadly, and as a result, helping our community. Because the kinds of things that when you talked about it being a people's court, we took that seriously. The kinds of things that we were engaged in and involved in were all about positively impacting the people of our community.
Yes.
And so it was, and that notion it continues to this day.
Was Judge Jones the AJPJ?
Yes.
The whole time you were
whole
a judge?
time,
the whole time,
right,
okay.
Right.
So Judge Capers, was she still on the bench when you were there? She was gone.
I missed that opportunity.
I was a young prosecutor when I served under her and learned a few things from her. Anybody else on the court that you remember?
Well, I was, Judge Adrian, of course, was, for me, I considered him a mentor. He got me involved with in his work in domestic violence. He and I were, he was so busy with all of his things that I would chair the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council because his plate was too full. But I got involved, and helping him create the specialized domestic violence docket. I actually served as one of the the first domestic violence judges in that specialized docket.
Another docket that's grown tremendously.
Right. But Judge Adrian was somebody that I continue to admire. He and I have been friends for all of these years, and every time a new idea enters my head, he and I need to grab a cup of coffee so I can tap into his wisdom.
Good. Well, yeah, you served at a good time.
I did.
And
I want to say, you mentioned Judge Jones, that his ability to, he was the first amongst equals, and he was superb as the administrative and presiding judge. I mean, I am so grateful for the confidence that he had in me to allow me to. I mean, when I look back on it, I suppose that all of these programs, was quite taxing on court resource. The people, you just don't do these things. You need the bailiff support or the probation department support. All of this, and he, with his support and his guidance, this happened. I mean, an idea is only as good as your ability to implement it. And he set the environment. He provided the leadership there for all of us really to happen. So
yes, he did, and he was a master at getting things done and working with people and getting everybody on the same page.
That's right.
Which contributed to the growth of our specialized dockets in the court. Problems. We had a civil docket also. Yeah. And you wrote a decision in a credit card case.
Right,
you remember that?
I sure do.
When I first became a judge and went to a judges meeting in Columbus, that was the topic of discussion.
Right.
So why don't you tell us about that?
It was we have on our civil docket, one of the more challenging areas is that people, particularly in the consumer world, they'll get served with a lawsuit. And they make the mistake initially of just wishing it away, and so they don't respond to the lawsuit. So there's usually a default judgment that goes up against them, and that goes to collection, and so the majority of those cases went that direction. But we being very sensitive to these are low figure cases, and a lot of people just they think they need to hire a lawyer, and that's always a challenge because that costs money. And we took a very liberal view of what constituted an answer. So if you filed anything, it's opposed to going to the default docket, you got on the court's personal docket. So I had this case, this woman who simply, after she got the lawsuit, just wrote a very short note. My recollection, it was even on a half piece of paper, saying, "I'm sorry. I did my best. I paid what I could. I just couldn't do any more." Something like that. And so she got on my docket, and I called. The case came, and I saw that answer, and she showed up in court, and and the attorney for the credit card company was also there, and he was claiming, well, she owes $15,000, something like that. And but she said, "Oh, I've been paying. I missed some payments," and so I asked the credit card lawyer, "Well, I want to see the payment history," and which a few weeks later they provided. It was a big stack of those, the paper copies of her credit card bills, and I went through one by one what she paid, what the fees were, all of the things that. And this all started for her with she had a $2,000 obligation. I don't know if it was a purchased or a cash advance. I can't really remember what the original $2,000 was. And she would make her payments. Sometimes she was a little bit late, but and because of the interest that was accumulated on the account, she went over her credit limit. And for every month she was over her credit limit, they tacked on more fees. Mm-hmm. And she would pay and pay and pay. So for that $2,000, what I discovered going through all of those, all of that paper was, she paid $10,000. I mean, for $2,000 she had paid all of this money, most of it in fees, mm-hmm. And then they were coming after her for like $15,000 more. and we hit the books. This just, you know how sometimes things don't feel right? This didn't feel right. And so came up with a theory that's supported in the law that became known as improvident lending. And really what the decision was is they bore responsibility, the bank, the credit card company bore responsibility to be able to identify people who were in this predicament, you know, way before, I mean, just allow this to continue on for years and years. This was known as improvident lending, and it caught on within the court system. This notion here that the banking community owes some responsibility not to take advantage of people unsuspectingly, or in a situation like this where she was doing everything she possibly could, and it wasn't like she was, you know, paying, you know, buying more things. This fee for years, and so anyway. That case was published, and I still get comments to this day on that from consumer law.
Well, and they're still talking about it in Columbus, so thank you once again. You're now you left the court. Why did you leave the court?
Well, I thought that in 2005 that given all my interest in activity in the community, there was an opportunity to step out and run for mayor of Cleveland, which I did. It was a very difficult decision to make, but I felt that I had won 2 citywide elections, and I had, given the work that I was doing in the community, that I was in the right position at the right time to do that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, Mayor Jackson was in a better position at the right time, the right place and right time, and he won the election.
How many people were in that race?
There was a lot of people. That was part of the one of the factors I didn't count on, and the fact that there were so many really complicated my candidacy. But the mayor turned around, and because we on the campaign trail, I think we impressed each other. And he turned around and asked me to be his law director, which I happily did and gratefully did for 6 years. Which time then there was a vacancy in the county prosecutor's office, and I ran for that. I left the city to run for county prosecutor, and again, not the right place at the right time again. So I guess I was 2 for 4 in my election. I batted 500, but okay. But I went into private practice at Calfee, and then opportunity under the new county government came up under Executive Budish. I was asked to be the county law director, and I thought, well, that's a nice opportunity, and I missed the public sector, and I was grateful to have an opportunity to roll up my sleeves and get back into it. So,
okay. What does the county law director do?
Well, we're the county is ably represented by both the county prosecutor in litigation and a number of things, as well as the law department. My lawyers, we do some litigation, but mostly the transactional work of the county. It's a $1.5 billion governmental entity where it funds a lot of programs, and each of those programs are a lot of contract work. So we do all of the transactional work. We're also a large employer, so we have labor and employment law, both the collective bargaining and litigation, and all of the issues that come out of being a large employer. And then we work collaboratively with the prosecutor's office for to handle cases that people bring against the county. And I'm in a position also then to advise the leadership there on policy initiative. The law touches everything, you know that, Judge. I mean, and there's you can't anything that you any program that you want to established. There's a lot of regulatory work, a lot of policy issues, a lot of legal issues that need to be addressed, and I get the opportunity to sit at that table and be helpful. And in addition, because of the other piece of this that where I become very involved and personally is because we're also the county jail. All of the issues that I'm talking to you about,
yes.
Mental health. Even on the bail reform piece, these are things that cross my desk, and I'm able to be involved in and continue to act with both the judges of your court, the Common Pleas Court, trying to help facilitate changes within the criminal justice system that are helpful, and I have an opportunity.
So you're in direct contact with the sheriff?
All the time. He's
All
a client.
the time, okay. Okay, well, that's a challenging place over
Sure,
there.
that's a very, it's a very challenging position. A lot of, I think that every community needs to pay very close attention to, the people that are incarcerated are being incarcerated in their name, and so how we treat people, how we help people who have to have that experience, and the things that that need to happen that changes their lives. Part of it is our duty and obligation, and we've done. The sheriff has done a great job within the way that he has organized the jail with workforce development, the re-entry programs within the jail. A lot of our inmates, before they're done doing their local time, will have an opportunity working with the county's workforce development system to begin their work, address their workforce issues, so that when they leave, they have a greater opportunity to step into something more productive in their lives. So when we think of like the work that we do in criminal justice and in the jail, it's just not maintaining people in a secure environment. Is putting together opportunities for them to eventually succeed. I mean, it doesn't help us to. We can safely secure somebody for X number of days. We really haven't advanced anything if all we're doing is they come back into our system at a later date.
Absolutely.
And so we need to. I think we're doing a much better job of trying to address those kind of issues. How do you prevent people after they've experienced the criminal justice system? How you prevent them from circling back in?
And that doesn't get the news coverage.
Apparently not.
Workforce development program, I'm aware of it,
Yeah.
just like pretrial services.
Right.
Were you aware of pretrial services when you were a judge?
Well, there's that word means a lot to various people. Pretrial services. A lot of the focus of pretrial service is being able to provide you with better information for you to make the decisions you need to make. So coming up with a appropriate assessment tool is a pretrial service. Releasing somebody, I know that when we were on the felony bench, they did have court supervised release, and so that was run by the county. So those pretrial, those are supervisory services. While I've been at the county, one of the things that we've expanded is the technology piece of this is the ankle bracelet. That if properly used could also be a pretrial service. So there's a lot of that. Occurring, and the idea here is that jail, especially for people who are in they haven't been convicted of anything, that being in jail is probably the least effective, most expensive response to their situation. Having them in the community, appropriately monitored, being able to continue to work, continue to support their families, continue to do things try to do things in a more positive way, might be helpful to them. It's certainly helpful to the community and beneficial to the system, because we're not bearing this cost. That those resources could be used for something a lot more in the long term, a lot more effective to the administration of justice.
Judge, I've enjoyed our time together. There are a lot more social issues we can talk about, a lot more county things going on that we need to know about. So thank you for continuing the work you're doing.
Well, thank you very much.
We really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate the continued partnership with you and your colleagues on the bench. They're great people, very effective at what they do. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you also for tuning in to this episode of Cleveland Honors. And remember, as Edmund Burke once said, bad laws are the worst form of tyranny. So long, everyone.